welcome to episode 14 of That Dynasty podcast. I'm your host, Matthew, alongside Isiah. We want to welcome you to the Dynasty podcast this week. Well, there's only one more week of matchups until the fantasy playoffs start. And rather than becoming clearer, the waters got even murkier this week. Speaking of murky, how's your head feeling? You recovered from COVID yet, man?
Yeah, my body's a lot more healthier than my playoff chances are in this league. So I'm glad to be feeling good with something right now. And Red Sox made a couple free agent selections today. So we'll see if we get bogey or not. We'll move from there. But yeah, I feel good.
At the time of this recording, Xander Bogaerts has not yet been re-signed, but we are hopeful.
Yeah, we are hopeful. We move.
Well, good. I'm glad that you are feeling better. And as always, we're excited to talk about the matchups that just went down this week. There are some close ones this week for sure. We're going to look at the week 14 matchups coming up. But before we do get into everything, make sure to follow us on Twitter and TikTok at That Dynasty Pod. Put full videos up on our YouTube channel. And we do have our podcast available on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you want links for those, it's in the description of the video and in the show notes if you're listening as well. All right. Well, let's get started. I'll run us down. We're going to go over some league updates, go over last week's matchup results, and make predictions for this coming week. Of course, our infamous MVP segment at this point. And then we're going to run down what the playoff hunt looks like as we've done the last couple of episodes. And it's going to be our final power rankings of the year. So with that being said, Isiah, take us through the league updates that went down this week.
Sweet. Didn't have a whole lot of trades because the trade deadline is passed, but had a couple name changes. King Cobb went from rated IR to Jonies in 4 first-round bye. Andy went from Kirk wears all the chains to FU QB horse. I think that's the most PG way I could have said that for you viewers at home. And Trevor changed his name to J&S Attorneys at Law. He did spell attorneys right this time, so we have been working on our spelling. And then Darius went back to the classic Scold School. Sweet. You want to get into do last week's predictions?
Sure. And I'll just back up and clarify that King Cobb, it's Jonesin for I can't even say it. Jonesin for first round bye. And that's the expression like Jonesin for something. So that's where that came from.
Okay, so yeah, dude, I was barely in the sleeper app, I feel like the last week, so I kind of just read that off, but now I know.
But he does have Zay Jones on his team, so I think that's where that name came from. The QB horrors name came from the fact that Andy had to play this last week without a quarterback. Who did he start? It looks like
he started
Perkins.
Andy?
Yeah.
Andy started Kyler Murray, no?
No.
Where you talking
on bye last week. So his team name was in reference to the fact that everybody hogged all the quarterbacks. So he actually started not Brian Perkins.
That's right, Bryce Perkins.
Bryce Perkins, yeah. And we'll get into that a little bit later when we talk about the matchups, but that's where his team name came from. And yeah.
Well, now that I got week 13 pulled up and not week 12, we should be in a better position who played last week. So we'll start with the first matchup. That was me going up against Dan Sullivan's Skull Soldiers. I was, I think, coming in 5-7, and Sullivan was 6-6. I won. I got the dub, even though Dan was projected to win by 8. I had a couple of my receivers played really well this week, and my flexes I was pretty happy with. Dak had a good game, solid. Pacheco really solid with CEH still on the IR or whatever. DK had a monster game. Higgins had a really clutch touchdown grab for me. Evan Ingram, good game. And then for Dan, I was super worried about Joe Burrow and his great performance he had. And then I think that Tampa Bay game was Monday, and I've never rooted against Alvin Kamara so hard in my entire life. And fortunately for me, he did practically nothing that game, gave him 5 points. And Michael Pittman gave him nothing pretty much. And then anytime you have to start Jordan Atkins, it's probably not ideal. So
Yeah, and I mean we'll talk a little bit about the other options that he would have had at that point, but not ideal. Not ideal from a starting lineup perspective, and he had a little bit of underperforming going on as well. Nice job with the victory. We definitely to look back at last week, I think every single person predicted that you were going to take the victory on that one, except for Dan himself. Dan had confidence that he would pull it off, and unfortunately, was not quite correct in that
have
regard.
you seen the what happened TikToks?
Yeah.
What happened, Dan?
But yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head on that one. It's 121 to 106. Very close matchup in the grand scheme of things compared to some of the blowouts we've witnessed recently. But yeah, you covered all the highlights there. How'd you feel about the Falcons putting up 0 points for you on defense?
Yeah, not ideal, but I'm trying to look at my other defenses who I would have started. And the Saints against Tampa Bay. Yeah, Saints got a good D, but I don't know. That didn't that who did the Falcons play against? Pittsburgh? I wasn't feeling too hot about them. They just got 0 sacks and no interceptions or turnovers. So,
Do you think that Pittsburgh is actually a better offense than Tampa Bay right now?
dude, yeah, which is insane to even think about. You know, the greatest quarterback of all time who has decent run game, decent O line, good receivers, capable tight ends. They just can't figure it out, which is insane. Meanwhile, the Steelers have a underwhelming running game, a rookie QB, good receivers, right? But nothing compared to what Tampa Bay has at this point. So yeah, I guess it's weird, but
It feels like it's got to be that I can't explain it, but it's got to be Pittsburgh right now. Like Tampa Bay literally scored 3 points till the final, 10 minutes of the game or whatever it was, 14 minutes. Like horrible.
pretty nuts.
Second matchup that we had from last week was Darius School against Team Gio 1, and it was pretty unanimous across the board that Darius was going to take the victory on this one versus Team Goni 1, except that I don't think Darius wanted to jinx himself, so he actually rooted against himself, and clearly that strategy worked out for him as he did take the victory, resounding by 40 points, 161.62 to 120.3. Team Goni 1 had a really solid performance from Jalen Hurts at 33 points on that side there. And McLaurin put up 24.5 points for him, as well as a solid showing from David Montgomery, 16 points, and Josh Palmer at 13 points with 7 receptions for 60 yards. But the rest of his roster of DJ Dallas, Jacoby Myers, Gabe Davis, Dalton Schultz, and the Commanders D was underwhelming and not enough to match up against. This is a great lineup last week. Josh Allen, who was the worst performer on his team. Crazy to say that. DeAndre Swift and Samaje P. Ryan. So I'll just stop here for a second. So Darius has started so many backup running backs this year, and every single one of them has had a fantastic game when he started them.
The craziest luck.
I don't understand it. So he started P. Ryan, 21.5 points. Swift finally starting to put some points up. Keenan Allen, 20.8 points, looking a little bit better than Noah Brown these days.
just a slight, a
little bit better. Diggs, 22.5 points. Andrews and Kelsey didn't even combine for 20 points together. And then you had Elliott, 18 points. And then the Cowboys defense put up 22 points as well. So, I mean, just, stellar performance, number one scoring team on the week, 161 points. I mean, can't say we didn't see it coming, but it still was a really solid week for him.
Yep. Yeah, I got nothing to add. You pretty much covered it all. I mean, he won by 40 points. I mean, dude, that's things for Team Joni. I was looking at the score here. He still put up a buck 20, which I think is like a top four or five score this week.
He would have at least beat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of the other managers.
Yeah, that's tough. But it's not tough for me because I have his first round pick, so I will take that L, and we'll move on to the next matchup, which is Buster Jacoby going up against King Cobb. Who at the time you guys are both 9-3, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah, we were.
And yeah, Matthew put the beat down on him, beat him 145-80. I'm just looking at his roster that he had to start last week, and he had to start Devontae Parker, Zay Jones, Hayden Hurst, Cortland Sutton, and then meanwhile, Matthew over here has wide receiver 1, RB 1, and I guess not QB 1. That's the one thing you don't have just yet. In every single roster spot for you. So yeah, I mean, hey, his defense be your defense, so we'll give him that.
Yeah. Another week of starting the wrong defense for me. That's, I guess, one of my takeaways. No matter what, I have 4 defenses. I have the Bengals, the Chiefs, the Dolphins, and the Jets. And every single week I play the matchups and I always pick the wrong one. So one of these days I'll pick the right defense and that'll be nice. I actually pretty much I actually did make the right call at quarterback this week, which was amazing. I started Tom Brady, and there was a minute there when I, honestly thought that Deshaun Watson was gonna outscore Tom Brady, and then he pulled it together in the last quarter. Thank goodness. But yeah, I mean, looking through my roster, this victory is mostly attributed just to Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill, who are just insane monsters this year. Having that stack has really been carrying me. Everyone else on my team really was just average this past week. But average and a couple of star players was enough to pass, King Cobb. He only had Fields put up 20 points and Barkley put up 20 points, and everybody else was pretty much a flop last week. So I was very happy to take that victory by a resounding, 66 points.
Yeah, I'm curious on if you're worse at picking defense or worse on making predictions at this point.
That's I think it's definitely predictions. I got to be worse at that. Believe it or not.
Yeah, that's not really hard to do.
So
all right,
we did have almost a clean sweep of picks on that one, except that Darius was rooting against me. I'm not sure why, but yeah, that didn't work out so well for him. From a picks side of things, Andy, Dan, you, and me all picked $96 fab bits, and it worked out. So the next matchup we're going to be looking at is Seton Power versus Isiah's Tiny Purse and Angie's team. This was a resounding, every single person picked a certain individual to win this matchup this week. That matchup we all picked was Seton Power, and Angie ended up winning by 14 points. And yeah, this was surprising. Happy for Angie to get the victory, but it was because of injuries. So Lamar Jackson and Jalen Waddle were on Seton Power's roster, and unfortunately both of them left the game with a combined 4 points. So had they played, or had he been able to start someone else on his team, I believe that Seton Power would actually have won this matchup this week. He had solid performances from Dalvin Cook and Jonathan Taylor. AJ Brown was a monster. CeeDee Lamb, monster game. Eagles defense was solid. And don't get me wrong, Angie's team performed all right. They put up a $127. She was, one of the top scorers in the week. I want to say third best manager of the week. Tony Pollard, 24 points. AJ Dillon, 20 points. Peoples Jones has looked great, 13 points. He had that punt return touchdown too, which I don't think counted on here. Actually, it may have counted. So I don't know how else this point total makes sense.
Yeah, it's 6 points for a special teams player touchdown, so that's how we got up to 13.
So then she started out. Hollins and Christian Watson has been a touchdown magnet. He had a 46-yard rushing touchdown, 48-yard passing touchdown. I don't know. Those solid players, Pollard, Dillon, Watson, really, really solid to build around for Angie's team.
Yeah, looking at it, I mean, it's pretty funny. Angie overperformed by about 25 points, and Seton Power underperformed by about 25 points. So that'll do it. Next matchup, by far the match of the week, we had Trevor going up against Andy. Two teams fighting for the playoffs, and this one came down to the wire. Andy won 110.9 to Trevor's 110.32. Andy won starting Bryce Perkins as his QB, who gave him half a point.
That was literally what he needed to win.
Yeah, like half a point. That's nuts. Christian McCaffrey, great performance. The dude looks like a receiver out there. Chris Olave did well. Devontae Smith was fantastic, over 100 yards, a touchdown. And then we'll talk about Garrett Wilson here in a minute, but another fantastic game for Garrett Wilson. He was climbing up the charts this year in wide receiver rankings. And then for Trevor, he put up 110. Just a couple underperformers: Latavius Murray, Devin Singletary, Ramondre Stevens, Kirk Cousins. They all didn't have necessarily bad performances. I mean, even Devin Duvernay, Deontay Johnson, they were fine. But if you're just getting 10 points out of all those guys, it's kind of tough to rack up, enough points to win. And their only player that put up more than 20 was Josh Jacobs, who put up exactly 20. So.
I don't know if you realize, look at Jacobs' stat line. He actually rushed for 144 yards and a touchdown. Jacobs is insane, but he had a fumble and lost the fumble. And if he hadn't lost that fumble, Trevor wins this game.
That's tough. Yeah, he could have recovered it, right? And he would have got extra 2 points or whatever, and he would have won. Oof.
Yeah.
Couldn't be me.
Woof. So from predictions, we were, let's see here. We had, I think every single one of us picked Trevor to win this one. Yeah, even Andy picked Trevor to win. So it was a clean sweep for Trevor there, and Andy managed to pull the sneaky old victory out from under the rug without a quarterback.
But that was very impressive.
I said it last week, if you're in a close matchup and comes down to the wire and it's that close, nobody's really wrong with their predictions. So yeah. It's that was really, really good.
And match. Looking at the projections were 3 points, 3-point difference. So
yeah. All right. So the next matchup, and I think it is the last matchup, is Tyrell versus Mike. So we got Reverend Big Cheese versus the Love Boat Incident. And this is kind of crazy because this was the second closest matchup of the week. Tyrell managed to only put up 97.28 points versus the Love Boat Incident's 94 points. Tyrell underperformed by about 20 points, and the Love Boat Incident overperformed by about 14. He started Cooper Rush, Mike did, and sat Patrick Mahomes, Trevor Lawrence, and Malik Willis, all who would have put up more than 0 points. In his attempt to get as high of a draft pick as possible, he still managed to put up a competitive fight against Reverend Big Cheese. Of course, Mike has Amon-Ra St. Brown, and anytime you start Amon-Ra St. Brown at these days, it seems like you're setting yourself up for what could be a great game. But on the other side, it was just enough to sneak on by. That combo of Justin Jefferson and Tyler Lockett really pulled it out for for Tyrell.
Yeah, dude, that was almost really, really embarrassing for Tyrell. He's like fighting for a playoff spot, and if he would have lost to a guy who's obviously tanking, um, the roast would have been coming. But fortunately for him and his 3.28 points, he managed to pull it off. But yeah, congrats to him on that dub there.
Did notice that Noah Brown played in this game, 2 for 15.
Weekly Noah Brown alert.
Yeah, just got to make sure we put that in there. How's that stack up?
Still
Who's
did more than Alberto. So.
Yep, nope, he did. He did more. So yeah, that's our predictions for the week. We actually all predicted that Reverend Big Cheese was going to take this one solely because Mike was tanking, and we were all correct in that regards. So there were a couple of easy picks this week. Most of us had winning records when it comes to picks. I was 4-2. You were 4-2, so we tied there. Dan was 3-3. Darius went 2-4 with his picks, actually not off to a good start. First week getting those picks in, and then Andy was 4-2 as well. And I'll have you guys know, like, we didn't collaborate on any of these picks beforehand. So the fact that these picks came in like very similar, nothing to do with collaboration or anything like that. So it is interesting, but yeah, off to a pretty good start. I am still 7 games behind, but I didn't lose any ground, and that's what's important to remember.
Are we doing? We're doing picks during the playoffs.
Yeah, obviously we're going to keep doing those playoff picks.
So statistically, you still have a chance.
I'm just saying there's a chance. It's possible.
There's a chance. All
Get
right,
every guess wrong, and I have to get everyone right, but there's a chance.
I'm 49-29. You were 42, and dang, I'm good at this. Man.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, we're both well over 500, so we got to give it to us.
Yeah, I mean you're a little bit over. You're peeking over. You're peeking over. I'm way beyond the horizon, my friend.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's talk about our MVPs. So we recap the matchups from this past week, but who actually helped these guys who actually win their matchups. So I'll actually talk about someone who could have helped them win their matchup. And my bench MVP this week, you're gonna love this, Isiah. You might have heard this name before. Michael Gallup.
Never heard of her. Never heard of her.
Michael Gallup was sitting on Seton Power's bench, and as someone who was highly favored to win last week, who would have thought that Waddle and Lamar would combine for less than 4 points? But when Seton Power lost to Andy, 113.64 to 127.9, he could have really used a solid 18.3 point performance from Gallup to help seal the deal. This week may actually cost Seton a playoff spot. Gallup ended up going 4 for 23, which is not great, but he had 2 touchdowns in the Cowboys' onslaught of the Colts. Honestly, that was like watching the Red Sox play against a little league team. So that's not obviously ideal. And yeah, it was pretty bad. But that's my bench MVP there, Michael Gallup. And my actual MVP of the week, someone who successfully led to a victory, was Tyler Lockett. Lockett was targeted 9 times for 128 yards and a touchdown. He's actually wide receiver 10 on the year in total points, wide receiver 14 points per game basis. And Lockett has secretly been flying as an absolute steal this year. Solid production from Geno Smith week in and week out. And man, why couldn't the Broncos get a guy like that?
I just want to apologize now. My headphones have not been connected for the last minute. So if you made any puns, I didn't laugh. Just know that it wasn't personal. I have no idea what you just said.
Oh, I said a lot of funny things. That was actually the funniest content I've ever done on the show. So I'm really sad you missed it.
Well, I'm glad you were finally funny here at some point. So.
Yeah, well, you laugh at me enough as it is. I thought maybe at least do it on purpose.
But at least your record's not as funny as mine. So
yeah. Well, I heard some really interesting things coming from your side of the recording, so I'm glad you brought it up because I was going to say that was awkward for all of our listeners at home.
Oh boy, I bet you did.
All right, so Tyrell was playing against Mike this week, who once again almost pulled out a victory while trying to tank. He's on an incredible run of not allowing his opponents to score hardly any points. It's actually kind of hilarious. We were joking in the team, not the team, but the chat the other day. Like, we should pull a prank on Mike and try to force him to win the rest of these games so that he actually makes it into the playoffs. It's like, you're trying to tank. Surprise, Mike, you're in the playoffs. But he's statistically eliminated at this point. But yeah, Tyrell was in the hunt. He still is in the hunt now after this game. He won 27.28 to 90. Wow, I said 27. 97.28 to 94. Thanks to Tyler Lockett. What do you got?
Sweet. And then for my bench MVP, I got Mr. James Cook. Finally had his best game as a pro so far. Unfortunately for Trevor, it came on his bench. Cook played 43% of snaps. So we finally saw his snap percentage come up. He had 64 rushing yards, had 6 receptions for 41 yards.
Talking about Deshaun Watson?
No, I'm not talking about Deshaun Watson. We're talking about men who practice things consensually.
Oh, sorry. I heard you say that it came on his bench, so I just wasn't sure.
Whoa, Matthew, you're a naughty boy. Anyways, as I was, James Cook had a consensual 16.5 fantasy points. Lost, well, in the matchup, Trevor lost by, sorry, I'm a little discombobulated over here. You got me blushing over here. Trevor lost by less than a point, and he could have started Cook over Stevenson, Murray, or Singletary, and he would have won his matchup against Andy. So Trevor would have listened to our advice that we gave him, in which me and Matthew both told him in person to start James Cook over all 3 of those running backs. He would have won, but you can't teach everyone how to fish, or whatever the saying is. So.
I think he was trying to do it, but he got too distracted correcting the spelling of his team name last week. I think he just misclicked. I think he was on his way there when he just got distracted. It's fine.
Just so everyone knows, we are being completely sarcastic right now. Just sometimes that's how it goes. You leave James Cook on the bench, which was the right call, and it did not work out. My MVP, though, Mr. Garrett Wilson, 2 weeks in a row with 20-point plus performances for Garrett Wilson. He's had a great connection with QB1 Mike White so far. He had 162 yards on 8 receptions for a total of 24.2 points. Last month, dude, some change really vaulted up the fantasy scoreboards. He's actually up to number 19 receiver on the year. Andy won his matchup by about half a point, and if Garrett had dropped one of those catches, it would have been a loss for Andy and would have really, really hurt his playoff chances. Andy, I think you should owe me an extra first-round pick for that Cam Akers Garrett Wilson trade, because I envisioned what that trade would do for you, and I think I got lowballed.
Well, let's talk about who could potentially make an impact this coming week here with our matchups for week 4. I'll have you go through, you'll talk us through the matchup to start, and then I'll go through with picks that we have in from Darius, Andy, and Dan as well for this week.
Well, starting off, you got me, Angie's burner account, going against Mr. Lobo incident over here. Don't have a whole lot to say on this. I'll win this one pretty easily. Love boats in a full tank window, especially a few wins, and some of the players are the same or near record lose. I think he would actually probably get bumped to a worse draft position. So I'm going to assume, and looking at his roster right now, he's probably going to drop a good measly 60, 70 points. And I'm hoping I hit triple digits, and it should be a very easy win for me. Nothing against Lobo's incidents' roster, but we know what he's doing right now. So.
Yeah, I think, it says a lot when he's starting James Robinson still, even though James Robinson has done absolutely nothing since coming over to the to the Jets in a tough matchup against the Bills. He has Amon-Ra St. Brown, which is going to be, he could go off for 30 points every single week with the amount of targets he's been getting. But we don't even know if Treylon Burks is going to play this week. Did you see his catch that he took? That massive hit on that knocked him out of the game?
What was I doing this Sunday? I was out somewhere, I think, and yeah, I watched it live. Now he was just laying there in the end zone. I was like,
Dude, I don't know how he caught the ball. It was an incredible catch, but
dude, not even catching it, but holding on to it. Like, well, there's times you'll catch it, and then you'll get popped like that, and you hit the ground and you let go. But that was insane, dude.
he just froze right up, I bet. But yeah, I mean, I think you're going to take this one pretty easily, and everybody else that picked as well also had you taking this one. Dan put in a comment that it's Isiah versus a tank. Give me Isiah, but Mike has been setting his lineups to where he's nearly won the last two matchups. So hopefully it's not a jinx where he's going to push you to underperform. But I think he's still going to take this one. So we're all unanimous on this one, which means Mike will probably win.
Yeah, honestly. Cool. Next matchup, we have Mr. Reverend Big Cheese against Skull Soldiers. I would like Dan to win here against Topo Domo. I don't think it's going to happen. Dan's got a couple guys on bye. It's really going to hurt his chances. Just looking at who he has to start, dude. You have to start for now. It looks like Jordan Akins and Chris Moore from that putrid, awful, disgusting, nasty Texans offense. Good luck with that. Projections are quite a bit off too. Is Topo Domo. We'll probably throw Ryan Tannehill and DJ Moore into a starting lineup. So I think he ends up winning and finishes out the year strong.
Yeah, I'm just trying to see, just running in my head the possibility of this going the other direction. Dameon Pierce does not look very good, and he's facing Dallas, who's been just kind of lights out. So even some of the bright sides on that end don't look too great to me. Yeah, give me Tyrell in this one, Reverend Big Cheese. And let's see what else we got for matchups on here. We have
what the other boys pick?
That's what I mean. Looking right now. So actually Andy has Dan taking this one. And so you must see the upside there from some of the potential players. We have Darius, who is putting his vote in with Tyrell and Reverend Big Cheese. And then for Dan, he actually has himself. He says, I'm going to keep the faith. It's important to do that, but probably going to lose this one. So he recognizes that he's probably going to lose, but he has to root for himself out of the faith. And it did work out not so great for him last week. Who we got next?
We got Schooled School. I'm speaking the commish against J&S Attorneys. We have lifelong friends becoming foes this week with Trevor and Darius. And Darius projected for about 155. Trevor's projected for about 110. I don't think it's going to be very close. I'm just going to look at the tight end and flex positions for them both real quick. Trevor's running out Trey McBride, Latavius Murray, and James Cook currently, while Darius has Mark Andrews, Travis Kelce, and Keenan Allen. I think that kind of speaks for itself. Good luck, Trevor, but I got commission on this one.
Something that came to mind is that we've seen a lot of 20-point swings, right? And that's been making games that don't seem to be close. Someone underperforming by 20 points, someone else overperforming, and that's creating some of these mismatches. But when you're projected to win by, 44 points, even a 20-point swing in both directions would still mean a 20-point victory. So in this particular case, Darius is ranked number 2 in the league for a reason, and his roster has some really, really solid matchups this week. I think it's going to be a bounce back week for Travis Kelce. Cowboys are facing Houston. Come on, give me that defense matchup all day. We got Diggs and Allen against the Jets. Going to be interesting to see if Sauce Gardner can shut down Diggs. So that could be where I could see Potentially some shutting down going, but it's Elliott against Houston. Their run defense is horrible. Swift has been much more involved recently. So, I mean, all in all, it's just going to be a really good game for Darius. And on Trevor on the other side, Jacobs is facing the Rams. Really good run defense. Wow. Can't believe I'm yawning so much. To be fair, it is 10 o'clock here on the East Coast right now when we're recording this, and I've been up since 5:15. And my daughter has RSV this week for over a week now. So not a great
What does that stand for?
RSV, respiratory something virus. Sinus, maybe. I don't know. It's pretty. It can be. It's a very, very common thing with children. But if it's like, depending on how young you are, it can be deadly. Like if you're a newborn baby and you get RSV, you can die. Like it's pretty serious. But yeah, she's had that been fighting that infection for over a week now. So I haven't got a lot of sleep. Apologize for the yawning, and been doing the grind all day, but it's not going to stop me from picking Darius in this matchup. Let's see what the other boys say here. Darius is rooting for himself this week, so he figured out that the jinx, worked last week. He's going to go for himself this week against Trevor because he's just in total takedown mode right now. And let's see. Oh, sorry, that was Andy's prediction. Darius. Why is this out of order? Darius is also going for himself. Okay, easy enough. And then Dan here says Darius is going to take this one, but it's going to be closer than projected. He thinks Darius is going to underperform and Trevor's going to over. So he still has Darius taking it, but just kind of like I talked about, even if there's that fluctuation of underperforming and overperforming, which could very well happen, still not going to be enough to take down Darius. So we got a clean sweep there for Darius on this one.
All right. Next matchup we have Team Joni 1 against FU QB Court. I think Andy wins this week. I think it's gonna be close. I wouldn't pay too much attention to these projections right now. Joni 1 still's got a bunch of studs on his bench, like Joe Mixon. Maybe Mike Williams comes back. Titans defense. On the other hand, I'm not sure how much he cares about throwing in a good lineup, considering he doesn't have a first and he isn't going to make the playoffs. So I'm not really sure what his thought process is, and maybe he wants to tank to have a better second. Like I don't know, because he can't make the playoffs. So I'm not really sure where his head's at with that. If he doesn't care at this point, but I do think Andy pulls it off, which is kind of a bittersweet for me. Because he's currently ahead of me in the standings. But I also have Team Joining One's first round pick. So kind of a interesting two-edged sword there. But what are your thoughts on the matchup, Matt?
I mean, every time I've rooted for Team Joni 1 this year, he's let me down. As of recently, every time I've bet against Team Joni 1, that's worked out. So I kind of am hesitant to go against against what's been working. I also see that he has on Andy's side, he has a lot of people playing in the Minnesota-Detroit game, going out there, and that should be a pretty high-scoring game. So let's see, with Mixon in, Mike Williams in, I think Andy's going to take this one. I don't think Mike Williams actually plays, so I'm going to say that there's too many injury question marks on that other side. So going to have
that's a good take.
Have to take Andy there. Let's see what the room says. So Andy is rooting for himself as well. Darius is going to actually take Goni 1 in this one. What was that?
I literally swiped to my ESPN app real quick. I was like, oh, the Bruins are playing. Let me just get a quick score update. Well, I have ESPN Plus, and so I just decided, hey, instead of showing the score, we'll just start playing the game at full blast volume. So hopefully we don't get copyrighted for that. And sorry for blowing out anyone's eardrums, but
Yeah, that was loud. But yeah, Darius actually has Goni one taking this one. So here clearly he doesn't care about Andy. And then over here, Dan actually thinks that Goni is going to take this one as well. Dan said that injuries will mean a huge number of backups are playing. If DJ Dallas is out, this could go Andy's way, but he's putting his bet in on Team Goni. So it's actually more split than I thought, which is fair because I guess it took me a minute to make up my mind on that one too. So
yeah, it'll be close regardless, I think. Next we got Isaiah's Tony. Sorry, Isaiah's Tony Purse. Isaiah's Tiny Purse.
yes, Tony.
Isaiah's Tony Purse. Verso Jones in 4. King Cobb, whatever his new name is, can't keep up. I said Darius will win this one. Obviously, meant King Cobb will win this one. Although shout out to Angie for getting win number 3 on the year. Christian Watson has been killing it. Shout out to her. But half of her starting lineup are Packers players who are on bye this week. So yeah, King Cobb wins this one.
It's not close. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Angie. You did a really good job of pulling together 3 wins this year.
Yeah, I was honestly at one point I thought she was never going to see a win this year. To have 3 is honestly she's probably like 500 the last 6 weeks or so.
Yeah.
Something like that.
That sounds about right to me.
Yeah, what the rest of the fellas got.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure we know what they all got in this one. So Darius took Angie. No, I'm just kidding. He took King Cobb. Andy took King Cobb, and Dan put in King Cobb, no Watson for Angie, no W, which is valid.
Fair. Dude, I did not to go on a tangent here. I did not realize Christian Watson was 6'5".
Is he really?
Oh, dude, he's a 6'4", 6'5", whatever. Regardless, he's a monster. Dude, I had no idea.
Yeah, he's
fast. Yeah, I think we'll look good year 2 with Rodgers in that second-year offense. Last match of the week, we got Buster Jacoby against Team Seton Power. Before I do my pick away here, quick mention that there were no buys this week, and each team was completely healthy. It'd be probably my favorite matchup we've had so far this year. Be an absolute slugfest. But for Seton Power, dude, he's got Lamar hurt. Jonathan Taylor's on a bye. You have to start Brock Purdy, looks like, and Jeff Wilson as well, which, are not great options, but when you're going up against your team right now, and to be honest, I think every team going up against you needs every single point that they can get. That really hurts. And I think you win, you firmly solidify yourself as a number 1 pick, and you get yourself a nice little comforting bye week next week.
Well, appreciate the vote of confidence in there. And, it's really unfortunate that, Seton Power lost Jackson, and then with Taylor being injured as well, or on bye week as well. One thing that I did notice, he's got Evans on the bench, but, based on who he's starting, you could swap Evans in for Waddle, and I don't even know if that would be an upgrade at this point. Evans and Brady haven't looked super great. So, I'm hoping for some great things. I got Derrick Henry going up against Jacksonville. He's destroyed Jacksonville every single time he's played them. So, I'm hoping this time will be no different. Devontae Adams is wide receiver 1 on the year now, after last week. And he's facing, a great matchup in the Rams secondary that seems to be, Jalen Ramsey used to be terrifying. You wouldn't play anybody against the Rams defense, and now it's like you want to play them against them. They have not been doing well. They've given up all hope, it seems.
Yeah, that team's cooked.
And they don't even have a first-round pick, which is just crazy.
Yeah. But not to go off for a second, but quick question. Was it worth it for them?
I mean, they got a Super Bowl. So,
I agree. I'd say yes.
this is going to be my team next year when you look at it and you're like, wow, you don't have a you don't have a first round pick and your team is old as dirt, but say, well, was it worth it? And we'll see. Let me ask you this. Who would you start for my defenses this week? I'm starting right now the Chiefs versus Denver because Denver sucks. Options are Bengals versus Cleveland, Dolphins versus the Chargers, or the Jets versus the Bills.
So the Jets defense against the Bill. I'm sorry, what are the other ones?
I'm starting the Chiefs against Denver.
Okay.
The other option is the Jets and the Bills, the Dolphins when they're playing the Chargers, or the Bengals against the Browns.
Chiefs.
Yeah. I think that's going to be the best option just because Denver can't score. Also, don't want to play the Bengals against the Browns because I'm starting Watson this week. I think it's going to be a shootout, and I think that Watson will look better his second week out. My other option that I would normally look at potentially is Tom Brady against San Francisco. I don't like that matchup at all. So I think I'm going to take my chances with Watson, and if it doesn't play out, hopefully my other guys can carry me to a victory this week. So I'm going to go with myself over Seton Power. I'm going to keep up the betting odds in my favor. I've won 8 games in a row, and hoping to make it into the playoffs here with another victory. We do have Andy thinks that I will take the victory as well. Darius has voted for me this week, which I appreciate. And Dan says that he takes me as well. He said Henry, Eckler, Adams, Hill versus waiver wire quarterbacks. Sad because this would have been a really good matchup. So
yeah,
same. There we go. That's our predictions of the week. Let's take a look at this here playoff hunt. After last week, how are things looking right now?
not too hot for me. So we talked about last week that I needed to win. Keep my playoff hopes alive. I won. What really kicked me in the butt was that Trevor losing by a point to Andy. They had the same record going to last week, but there's a pretty large point differential gap between Andy and I. So this is a quick rundown. Not going to talk about the first 3 seeds in the playoffs right now. Already glued in. But number 4, we got Team Seton Power, 7-6. Number 5, we have Topo Domo at 7-6, and then 6 we have Andy with 6-7, and then Dan and I are 7th and 8th. We're both 6-7, and then after that we have Team Joni 1, Trevor, Sullivan, and Angie. No need to talk about 9 through 12 because they will not be making the playoffs, regardless. Well, I guess technically maybe if Trevor drops like 250 points and all the 6 and 7 teams lose, I guess maybe.
I was just trying to remember like who did we just predict to win? And so like we're predicting like of those 2, are we predicting Trevor or Team Goni 1 to win? And like the Team Goni 1 matchup we said was going to be potentially a toss up.
And then Trevor is going against Darius, and Darius will win, most likely. So I'm not going to talk a whole lot about the bottom 4 guys. So looking at matchups, I'm going to go out a limb and say Seton Power is going to make it regardless what happens, just because of how many points he scored. If he loses, he'd be 7-7, which worst case is still a playoff spot. Because he has 1,655, and then the second guy closest to that is Andy at 1514. So unless Andy outscores Seton Power by over 100 points, 150-ish, which won't happen. So I'm going to say he's a lock. And then the big question marks are the 5th and 6th spots. Topo Domo, I think we chose to win this week, correct?
Yeah, we picked him because he's facing the tanking team.
Well, I'm facing the tanking team. Oh, he's facing Team Johnny 1, I think.
No, it says Reverend Big Cheese is facing Mike, Skull Soldiers. Oh, wait, that's Dan. I'm sorry, not the tanking team. Wow, I have the wrong Sullivan. So he's
You're good.
yeah, he's facing Dan. We still all picked him to win.
We did. So just looking at that matchup real quick. If Topodomo wins, obviously he's in it. If he loses, he would have a tie record with Dan at that point. We'll imagine seed and power is 7-7. Worst off, we'll have number 4 seed, right? So worst case scenario for Topodomo is he'd be 7-7, tied with Dan Sullivan. Um, but Dan Sullivan would have the tiebreaker over Tyrell because he's point differential is almost 100 points greater than Tyrell. So that even bump him down further. So at that point, you're looking at maybe me and Andy sliding in that 6th spot with Dan being the 5th spot in that scenario. So I'm playing Love Boat Incident, right? Who was the tanking team. Unless everything goes absolutely wrong, I will win. So I should end the year 7-7. So put myself hopefully in a good position. And then Andy is playing. Can you remember who's Andy's playing real quick? I think he's
He's
playing Team
playing
Joni 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, if Andy wins, I'm pretty much practically screwed. Unless I outscore Andy by what is that, about 70-ish points, which
Yeah.
is quite a bit.
But there's a scenario
So
here where Goni one wins, he still doesn't make the playoffs, where Tyrell loses to Dan, and you and Dan make the playoffs, and Tyrell falls out.
yeah, I mean honestly, with the Tyrell Dan thing, um, I don't really care what happens with that matchup too much. I think because
I think
it doesn't really affect me.
well, I think it does because if you want Dan to win, because that will knock Tyrell down, who you have more points than, and then you guys would be tied and you'd pass him in the ring.
Good point. Good point.
Because if otherwise you'd be, you know what I mean? Like, I guess if Dan loses, you're not passing Tyrell with your record. So I think the best.
Yeah. So yeah, for me personally, I'm getting hoping Dan gets the upset over Topodomo.
Well, you didn't root
Andy
for
loses
him.
the team. I didn't pick him.
Yeah,
It doesn't mean I'm not rooting for him.
true. I guess that's true.
Some of us like to make our picks intellectually, not emotionally. Scoreboard. And then hopefully Andy loses the Team Joni 1. Do I think that happens? No. I could see the Dan Sullivan Topodomo matchup going either of two ways, but I'd be really shocked if Team Joni 1 beats Andy. And unfortunately, I see myself the 7th seed is probably most likely what's going to happen, which sucks considering I think there's 2 back-to-back weeks where I lost by it was 10 points or less, and then some of that was due to some crappy lineup decisions. So if I were to make a prediction, we have our top 3. I think Seed and Power makes it. I think Tyrell makes it. And that 6th spot, I think Andy holds it down, or maybe Dan takes it instead of Topodomo. But I think Andy's in, Seed and Power's in, and the second person will either be Topodomo or Dan. So,
All right. Well, there you have it. There's the predictions. I'm gonna go a little bit bolder, and I'm gonna say that Dan takes down, breaks the bracket, and I think that ends up knocking Terrell out of the playoffs. And I think it's going to be Seed and Power. I think it's going to be Dan, and I think it's going to be you.
you think Team Joni 1 beats Andy?
I think it's possible. Bracket breaker.
Well, what a good guy. I like that.
Listen, he has some studs on that team. I don't think it's likely, but I think it's possible.
Yeah, that's true. And then looking just for a quick sec, Angie is obviously gonna have the first pick in the draft this year. Congrats to her. And then the next 3 positions are all tied at 5 and 8.
You mean Seed and Power is going to have the first pick in the draft?
Oh, that's right, Angie. No. Yeah, Seton Bauer has one of the best squads in our league. Have the first round pick because of Andy this year. And then after that, we don't really have a say on where people are going to be at because it's so. Because 6 through 11 are all one game with each other, so we'll see. But I'm hoping It's tough, dude. I want to make the playoffs, but I want Team Johnny One to have a pretty high pick. So I mean, whatever happens, I'll try to find the bright side. But
Yeah, there'll be positives to both sides. Worst case scenario would be he wins and then you still don't make the playoffs. So that would be worst case.
yeah, why would you even bring that up? Because that's exactly what's going to happen now.
Oh my gosh. Well, we gotta look at the last power rankings of the season here. On the final update before we go into the playoffs, and nothing of the power rankings even matters anymore. But we are going to work from the bottom all the way up. There's not a ton of big movements. The largest movement is 2 ranking spots. We have a lot of people moving down 1 spot, and that's about it. So at the very bottom, Angie, congratulations. You started from the bottom and you're still there. Number 12, Isaiah's tiny purse. In moment of silence for staying there for the entire season. However, I will say that your points have actually gone up in your power ranking. So nice job in actually moving your points higher to the point where you almost passed the Love Boat incident. If you look at the power ranking points, you were at 79.5. He was Mike's at 80.01. So he's dropped so much in his points, and you've climbed that you almost passed him in the last week of the year, but you're still at the bottom.
Say what you want about Angie, but god dang, is she consistent?
She's consistent. What can you say? Number 11, Love Boat incident, no movement there. Still at number 11 from last week. Coming in at number 10, this is a drop from one spot from last week, is Trevor, J&S Attorneys at Law. Sizable lead above Mike, though, in the power rankings. Then at number 9, also down a spot from last week, is Skull Soldiers. After the loss last week. Number 8, this is up 2 spots. It's Isiah, Angie's burner account. You've probably had some of the most fluctuation in this league, but up to number 8 right now in the power rankings.
Hopefully, if we were to do one next week, which we're not, I would be at number 6, but we'll see.
That's hopefully. Number 7, down a spot from last week, is Team Goni 1. Number 8, sorry, we're going backward. Number 6 is Reverend Big Cheese, down a spot from last week as well. Number 5, we have up 2 spots, is Andy, FUQB Whores. Number 4, down 1 spot, Jonesin 4 first round bye. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. King Cobb has fallen all the way down to 4 in the power rankings. Up to number 3, this is up a spot from last week, is Team Seton Power, so they flip-flopped in the power rankings. Number 2 has not changed as well. That is Scold School, Darius at number 2, and at number 1 with a sizable lead in the power rankings is myself at $96 fab bids. So happy to have taken back taking the number 1 spot by the end of the year. And I think I made some good moves to put myself on top going into the playoffs. See what happens. All right. Well, that is a wrap for this week's episode. Guys, please be sure to like and comment on the video. Thank you for doing so if you have already. And if you're watching on YouTube, we appreciate you for interacting with us. It does mean a lot. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave us a rating or a review. It really does help. If it didn't help, I wouldn't be asking. So I really do appreciate that. And follow us on TikTok and Twitter to stay up to date with the latest content. Interact with us throughout the week. We got Monday Night Football this week for the Patriots game, man. Patriots versus Cardinals. What's your prediction?
I got the Cardinals winning. My sister and dad are actually going to the game.
Really?
Down on Monday in Phoenix. But I don't know. I think it's a toss-up. When I say the Cardinals, it's because I've thought about it today, and we're notorious for being awful with running QBs. I guess that's my reasoning. I could be convinced either way. I don't like this Patriots team. So
Patriots defense has been pretty solid this year, and the Cardinals have not been. They've been very bad. So I mean, I could see.
And our offense has been very bad.
Yeah, well, their defense might be enough to make our offense look good, to the point where they'll keep us in the game, and then our defense, I think, will keep us in the game as well. So I mean, I think it'll hit the under on the Vegas total. It's a pretty low projection, but I think that it'll be a close game, and they should have, Cardinals should have Hopkins back, and Hollywood, Rondell Moore should be back, so they'll have some weapons. James Conner. And yeah, I think it'll be a good game. But my prediction is that Patriots are actually going to take this one.
That's fair.
Didn't work out so well for
I
me
think
last week, but you know how I am with predictions.
Yeah, I think that was 2 weeks in a row we were wrong because we had, I think we called the Vikings game wrong as well.
That was close though.
That was a touchdown by Hunter Henry, but I'll move on.
Yep. Well, that's all we're gonna have for today. So next week's the playoffs. Thank you for tuning into that Dynasty. Wow, that Dynasty podcast, and we'll see you next week for the fantasy playoffs. Hopefully, both of us are in it. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you guys later.